Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. I am Carrie Rouyer. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm an associate professor in the chemistry department. The title of my talk is Fostering Belonging in a Remote Senior Seminar Class. So this was an HHMI CIG fast track project that originally started with looking at belonging in 2 of my fall semester classes, but one of them was canceled, so this became about the senior seminar class only. Additionally, I had planned on using some more formal metrics or surveys to assess the belonging, but once the semester started, I kind of forgot about some of that, and a lot of it just went out the window. So here's my best interpretation of some of the outcomes, and looking for the goals of the CIG. But it is well documented that if a student has a strong sense of belonging within their academic interest group, then they are more likely to stay with that academic area of interest. So one might wonder about the need to think about belonging in a senior seminar class. The assumption might be by some that by now most of the students in the class should feel connected with their peers and with the discipline, and so that interventions to increase belonging would likely have an insignificant impact on retention with the major or their academic interest group. But a student's senior year is a time when belonging shifts from the interest group being made up of their classmates and to those that comprise the broader professional field. And so one of the things that I really wanted to look at for this class was that since the class was going to be moving to a remote setting, could I at least kind of maintain a sense of belonging for the students in the class, despite the fact that we wouldn't be in person and doing some of the normal engagement activities that we would be doing as part of the class. So to give you a little bit of context about what the class is before I dig into the outcomes, this is the chemistry research seminar. It's typically got 10 to 20 students in it. It's a 1 3-hour class with 0.25 units in it. It is a requirement for the chemistry majors, but strongly recommended for the biochemistry majors. It focuses on chemical information literacy with 2 main course expectations. One is ultimately writing the review paper for their senior capstone project, and then also discussing the nature of research in terms of conduct, publication, and professional development. And so the impetus for this CIG was that in 2019, some of the students had expressed how engagement with their peers in the class, both in and outside of the class, were actually really important for helping them feel successful in the class and ultimately completing their senior capstone, and really feeling like they're a part of the major and in this community that we had built. And so when I looked at kind of what would be the biggest barrier in moving into fall 2020 was the desire to kind of create or even maintain that sense of community given the remote setting of the class. And so to kind of talk about the 2 cohorts a little bit more specifically, which are my comparison groups, in that I was looking at, in 2019, I had 19 students. The format was pretty similar to what I did in 2020, discussion-based with some activities. We had weekly themed small group and whole group discussions, and students completed progress reports or participation logs through Moodle. In 2020, it was a much smaller class. It was semi-flipped, so they had some short videos to watch outside of class in preparation for the discussions in class. Still had weekly themed small group activities. I didn't have any participation logs, but they did submit progress reports through Moodle. I'm happy to talk with people about that more. And I conducted a mid-semester gift through the CIP. So I'm just going to skip to the outcomes in the interest of time to give you a sense of what I think might be happening or what kind of happened with the semester. And so in looking at the progress reports that students filled out weekly and the gift and kind of comparing that to student responses from the fall, the difference in the progress reports is that in the progress reports from 2019, the students would more commonly talk about their engagement with each other and others in both in and outside of the class. Part of that is because I explicitly asked for that for their feedback on that, and so students provided that information. I removed that question for 2020, partly because I felt like it was going to be a challenging enough semester as it was, and that if students were just showing up to class each week and making progress on their paper, then that was wonderful, and that to ask them to do more than that might be a little bit challenging, particularly for some of the students who are really struggling with some mental health issues throughout the semester. So what I did find, though, in kind of a more open response question to the students in 2020 was that there was a lot of explicit and implicit notes about individual struggle that the students were experiencing. And so that helped me as the instructor kind of work with the students one-on-one in order to help them feel like they could still make progress and be successful for the semester. And so I thought there was some advantages there, but it was less so about kind of that community building and more so about, individual struggle. The 2020 gift gave me a couple of insights too about though how students might be thinking about their engagement in the class and the benefits of being in the class. And so most of the students talked about how some of the strengths for the class were about the breakout rooms and meeting synchronously every week to see each other. And that they suggested that we have shorter class activities so that they could engage with each other more informally, as well as with the instructor for the class, as well as some one-on-one meetings to see how things are going. And again, I think a little bit of that is coming through, and that individual struggle, and that the students really feeling like they wanted some more one-on-one help on being able to make that progress. So overall, I think what I garnered from that information was that students valued their time in class because the struggle was ultimately shared amongst all of them, and not so much feeling like they were the only ones that were struggling. Although I think in their reports that some of them still felt that they were struggling more than others. And so I tried to normalize that in some of our class discussions by talking about it more generally on what was happening. The other thing that I used was course evaluations to look at some of the outcomes for the class. And so one of the questions that we ask in our course evaluations is that the instructor helped create a positive and learning environment. And so both 2019 and 2020, 100% of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed with that statement. And so to me, that tells the students value being in the class, and that they find that it's a positive experience for them. Some of the free responses in fall 2020 talked about the students valuing working in groups, making it feel like it's a little bit more normal for them, getting to know each other and the instructor more, as part of kind of some of the things that they really enjoyed in the class and they thought were positives. They also talked about how they would have liked even more time in breakout rooms or in these smaller discussions, because really finding value in those discussions with their peers and getting feedback from their peers on how they're doing. And that some comments about that kind of balance that I was trying to create on creating some structure for both in and out of class work, and that maybe there's still some room for improvement there. But overall, I think what I gathered from their information was that the students really valued connecting with their peers, and they wanted more of that as a way to help with the class. And I think part of it is because the class structure made it so that they didn't have to set up those appointments, that it was all innate to the class. So just as an overall kind of conclusion, just in a reminder that the barrier that I was looking to overcome was to maintain a sense of community within their peer group, even though we moved to that remote setting in class compared to what I have had in previous semesters of in-person. And then I was also hoping to kind of create a sense of community with the broader professional field, given the senior seminars aspect of the class. And so I feel that I was able to maintain that sense of community with their peers of similar academic interests, but that the data's inconclusive about creating the community with the broader professional field, partly is because I did never ask specifically about that. And so I don't have any sense from the students whether they feel like they're connected to the broader field of chemistry. And so that's something that I will have to work on in subsequent semesters to more specifically address, and then also seek feedback from the students about that. So with that, I just want to thank the students from fall 2020 Chem 475. They were a fantastic group. They made it through the semester and have all subsequently successfully completed their senior capstone projects. And then a variety of people, UTON, my department colleagues, the CIP, and other participants in the NatSci reading group for all of their help on thinking about the class structure, moving things to a remote setting, as well as thinking about how we can make all of our classes here at Kenyon more inclusive and equitable for our students, regardless of the setting that we are teaching in. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussions at the little mini conference.